The Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous land empire in human history. At its height in the 13th century, it stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, covering nearly 9 million square miles. It connected civilizations, opened trade routes, and reshaped the world. History remembers this empire through powerful names: Genghis Khan, Subutai, Kublai Khan, and through images of unstoppable horsemen thundering across the steppe. But empires are not built by legends alone. They are built by people, ordinary, replaceable, and often forgotten. Behind every conquest were hundreds of thousands of soldiers whose lives were never recorded. Among them were foot soldiers, men who walked while others rode, who carried while others commanded. This is the story history rarely tells. When people imagine Mongol armies, they picture elite mounted archers. But cavalry was only part of the force. A large portion of Mongol armies consisted of infantry, foot soldiers drawn mostly from conquered populations. These men came from China, Persia, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and Korea. Many were farmers, craftsmen, or laborers before they became soldiers. Even among ethnic Mongols, only those who could afford horses and equipment became cavalry. The rest walked. Foot soldiers held the lowest status in the military hierarchy. Many walked for days with heavy packs, leaving behind homes they might never see again. They had fewer supplies, weaker armor, and little chance of advancement. Their role was not glory, it was utility. They existed to support the empire's expansion, not to be remembered by it. For most foot soldiers, joining the Mongol army was not a decision, it was an order. The Mongols organized conquered territories using a strict decimal system. Every group of households was required to provide men for military service. Refusal was punished collectively. Historical sources describe villages destroyed for failing to meet quotas. Leaders were executed, survivors were enslaved. For many conscripts, the choice was simple and brutal: march with the army or die at home. Some marched in snow so deep it swallowed their boots. Others under scorching sun, their mouths parched, their feet blistered. Families were separated without ceremony. There were no contracts, no terms of service, no guarantees of return. Once taken, a man belonged to the army. His labor, his body, and ultimately his life were no longer his own. Life as a Mongol foot soldier was defined by constant hardship. Food was basic and unreliable: millet, barley, dried meat when available. Water often came from melted snow or muddy streams. During long campaigns, hunger was common. Shelter was minimal. Infantry slept in the open or under simple felt coverings. Rain, snow, and wind were constant companions. Unlike cavalry, foot soldiers could not hunt easily or move freely. Blisters, frostbite, and hunger were constant companions, each step a reminder of how fragile life had become. They followed supply columns and survived on whatever the army secured. Disease spread quickly. Poor nutrition, exhaustion, and exposure weakened bodies long before battle began. For many, survival itself was a daily struggle. Mongol campaigns crossed some of the harshest environments on Earth. Foot soldiers marched through frozen Russian winters where temperatures dropped far below zero. Frostbite claimed fingers, toes, and lives. In summer, armies crossed deserts where heat and dehydration killed silently. Infantry marched 15 to 20 miles a day, often more, while carrying weapons, supplies, and siege equipment. There were no modern boots, no medical relief, no rest days. Those who fell behind were rarely helped.
The sun or snow didn't wait, and neither did the army. Lagging soldiers were left behind, disappearing into the wilderness. The army moved forward regardless. The march never truly ended. Even between battles, exhaustion was constant. Fatigue became a permanent condition.
Foot soldiers formed the backbone of Mongol logistics. They dug trenches, built roads, constructed bridges, and hauled siege machines across vast distances. They transported food, weapons, and prisoners. During major sieges, infantry performed the most dangerous labor. At Baghdad in 1258, foot soldiers diverted rivers, built pontoons, and worked under enemy fire for weeks. These tasks were physically punishing and deadly. Accidents were common. Deaths from overwork were rarely recorded. Without infantry, Mongol armies could not function. Yet, despite their importance, foot soldiers remained expendable.
In battle, foot soldiers faced grim odds. They were often placed at the front, holding ground, absorbing attacks, or engaging enemy infantry while cavalry maneuvered. Their armor was lighter. Their mobility was limited. When formations broke, infantry could not escape easily. Casualties were high. During sieges, conditions were worse. Foot soldiers filled moats, undermined walls, and scaled fortifications under arrows, stones, and boiling liquids. Historical accounts described casualty rates exceeding 50% in some assaults. New waves replaced the fallen. Bodies were trampled underfoot, the living forced forward while the dead were left in the mud, nameless and forgotten. Victory came at a terrible cost, paid almost entirely by those on foot.
The Mongol military enforced absolute discipline. Under the code known as the Yasa, disobedience, desertion, or cowardice could mean death. Punishment was swift and public. More terrifying was collective responsibility. Soldiers were organized in units of 10. If one failed, all could be executed. This system forced soldiers to police each other. Trust became dangerous. Survival depended on obedience, not loyalty. Fear was not a side effect, it was a tool. The goal was simple: ensure that fear of punishment outweighed fear of the enemy.
Medical care was minimal and unequal. Elite cavalry and officers sometimes received treatment from Chinese or Persian physicians. Foot soldiers rarely did. Arrow wounds, broken bones, and infections often became fatal. There were no antibiotics, no sterilization, no hospitals. Mongol doctrine prioritized speed. Soldiers who could not march were frequently left behind with little food or protection. Historical records describe thousands of wounded abandoned during campaigns. Most never survived. Those left behind howled in the cold nights, their cries swallowed by the marching army. In the Mongol system, usefulness determined value. Once a soldier could no longer fight, he ceased to matter.
The Mongol Empire ruled over 100 million people. This vast population allowed commanders to treat infantry as replaceable resources. Losses were expected, calculated, and accepted. During assaults, infantry were often sent in waves to exhaust defenders. High casualties were not considered failures if objectives were achieved. Administrative records carefully counted weapons and horses, but rarely named ordinary soldiers. In life, they were numbers in formations. In death, they were numbers in reports. Their individuality vanished into the machinery of empire.
Despite its brutality, the Mongol military system was devastatingly effective. It combined cavalry mobility, infantry labor, advanced siege engineering, and fast communication. The Yam relay network allowed messages to travel hundreds of miles in days. Psychological warfare amplified its power. Cities that resisted faced annihilation. Many surrendered without fighting. This efficiency reshaped Eurasia, connected East and West, and transformed global history. But it succeeded by accepting massive human loss, especially among those least valued. The empire moved forward because someone else was always available to replace the fallen.
History celebrates conquerors, not the conquered. Museums display weapons. Books praise strategy. Names of Khans endure for centuries. But the foot soldiers remain invisible. Their thoughts, fears, and suffering were never written down. They marched without choice, fought without reward, and died without memory. To be a Mongol foot soldier was to serve an empire that did not know your name and did not need to. Remembering them does not diminish history's achievements. It completes the truth. Because every empire, no matter how powerful, is built on human cost.